This season on The Couch, Falz the Bad Guy and Laila Johnson Salami place your presidential aspirants on the hot seat.
This guy want to put me in trouble. I won't allow you.
Nobody.
Okay.
No, this is a very important and sensitive topic, I believe.
The truth.
Okay, do you think that right now, people that have a certain sexual orientation are being discriminated against?
I don't know. I don't believe so.
The excitement.
C'est le moment de faire la fête, c'est le moment.
And the totally unscripted nature. Oh wait, but what is On The Couch?
It's a relaxed talk. I don't want anybody to come here and title chest. I don't know, stronger face. This kind of setting is all relaxed. You have your stocking, have your shoe, put on your knicker.
It's On The Couch with Falz and Laila.
Hello everybody, you are welcome to another episode of On The Couch. My name is Falz the Bad Guy. I've lost my voice, but the devil is a liar.
And I'm Laila Johnson Salami. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of On The Couch. We have a very special guest here with us today.
Thank you very much, Laila. And to you, Falz. I am very delighted to be with you on the couch. My name is Oby Ezekwesili, but then, that's like a nickname. My full name is Oby Ezekwesili, because that's the name you're going to be finding on the ballot when you get to vote.
Nice.
Brilliant. So let's start off with you and your entire career, which is very interesting. You've worked both in global and national institutions, and you have a profile. So how did you begin?
I think I began by being this studious child that sometimes my mom had to push me out of the house and say, go and play. Go and play with your playmates. I was always just reading. I loved that. How did you know? But your generation doesn't use a fico.
We do,
do you use a
we
fico?
used to when we were in school. Yeah,
Okay. I thought that was like old school. Because I know that you use words like nerd.
Yeah.
And
Those are the more foreign.
The butter ones.
The butter ones, exactly.
People would tell you that one of the key things that we did was to begin to professionalize teaching. Some of my generation would tell you that teachers were everything at the time we were growing, and they were actually always people who excelled, and they were in the teaching profession as a vocation. So their heart and mind and head together were completely in the teaching, and they were well trained. So we had lost that. So we needed to professionalize teaching again, to make teaching a profession that the high percentile of our people who are cognitively sound and people who had the skills would go into teaching. How did we do that? The Teachers Registration Council is the certification body for teaching, but it had fallen into disrepair. We needed to change the law to give it more teeth. So it would be like the legal profession where you've got professional regulatory system. Then we began the work of taking many of the teacher grade 2 certificate holders. The majority of the people in the basic school system were still holding teacher grade 2 certificate, very old and dated, teacher training qualification to teach children who were going into a modern society. So we had to design a program of quick teaching for 2 years to get them from TC2 to become at least a minimum of National Certificate in Education, NCE. Okay. Then we designed a program of in-service training, so that there is constant refreshing of the knowledge of the teachers. Why I'm taking so much time on the teachers initiative is that research showed to us that if you fixed quality of teachers, you enhanced learning outcomes for children. And so if we got the teaching right, then we would be able to have more than 55% of what we needed to do to fix education. And then the other issues of revamping the curriculum. We needed to upgrade the curriculum and get it to be a dynamic instrument, document. We decided that it was necessary for critical thinking, reasoning, and entrepreneurship to be part the education curriculum at all levels of education. And then we decided that it was necessary for technology to be at the center of the way that we teach as instructional materials. So we had a program to get teachers to even understand technology. Many of them hadn't seen the computer, but their children were already using computers. So basically, with education, you needed to get it to be not financing education, but investing in education, which meant that you needed to know those investments that could give you better learning outcomes for the children. And that the teacher being like more than 55% determinant, quality of teacher being more than 55% determinant of that needed to be an area of focus, not just building classrooms and then just awarding contracts for structures without the content.
But Ma, would you say that that was the remedy, and would you say that was effective?
The thing is that by the time that I was leaving Ministry of Education, we were already at about 22,000 of the 145,000 that needed to begin to re-professionalize their skills. Imagine that what that would have done if we consistently carried on.
So you did, that was halfway then. You were only halfway through the process.
I was Minister of Education from, I think, July of 2006 until April.
So barely a year.
Barely a year. But for me, that didn't matter. We actually identified over 340 items of reforms that we needed to work on. And the work that we were doing were at different levels of completion. One of the key reforms for me was the quality assurance in education, having inspectorate division that is strong in order to evaluate and monitor what goes on in the school system. We were able to cover all secondary schools. That was the basis upon which we now have data that is captured under the Nigerian Education Management Information System. Another part of it was, looking at the gap between those who went to university and didn't get jobs. So we established a new layer in education in Nigeria, which is called the Innovation Enterprise Institutions and the Vocational Enterprise Institutions. It really takes people and over a period of 6 months and sometimes a year, adapts their existing knowledge into skills that are in demand in the marketplace.
Is that program still running today?
It is running because not in the spirit that we had conceived it. It was basically private sector driven, and it is registered. You get an accreditation as a private a proprietor for that level of knowledge from the Nigerian Board for Technical Education in Kaduna. The skills that we were supposed to produce out of that from the private sector every year was about 300,000.
Okay, but unemployment has also risen between that time, 2006, and now. So would you say that the program in itself is effective, and would our unemployment problem be more to do with our population growth, or do we need to see better programs in terms of getting graduates into the working place?
I think it's about, you need to change the content. So curriculum change was a complement to that kind of interventionist program that we did. But you also have to keep an eye on population. As population expands, you have to think critically of how you use innovative mechanisms to expand access to education. We don't have that. It was part of what we were doing in the education reform. If you look at the joblessness, where we have more than 40% job unemployment plus underemployment amongst the youthful segment, what is critical is not just skills which enable the young people to be employable. Employability is key. However, if the structure of the economy is not expanding sufficiently for people to find the jobs, for there to be investment in critical sectors that would demand for the skills, you would still have a problem. So what would have happened is that you have fixed the demand side, the supply side, but you haven't fixed the demand side.
So would you say that you didn't have enough time to completely reform the education sector during your spell as minister?
well, there's no way. Even if you gave 2 years, the thing about reforms is that people must be ambitious about them and start them off. And the context of continuity of government policy means that reforms that have been begun by any government that matter to the citizens must continue.
I think my concern, and probably, an ordinary man's concern, will be, if you do become president, within those 4 years, how can I tangibly see, improvement in standard and quality of education?
People say it about the time that I was in education. The sheer scale and the sheer scale and the vision of the reforms that we pursued was equivalent to 3 years' work. The issue was that you couldn't just stop it midstream. You needed the next government to not be political about things that matter to your citizens.
Now, another sector that's very worrying is security, and there's several issues surrounding security. And I know that's something of great concern to you because you pioneered a global movement, the Bring Back Our Girls movement. So I think we should focus on Boko Haram. Under your potential administration in the office of the president, how would you get rid of Boko Haram and insurgency in Nigeria today?
I think that I would take a human security perspective, which is a broader concept in security measures. The number one thing is to recognize that terrorism is a new normal around the world. Every country needs to plan on the basis of the fact that because boundaries are no longer rigid, that all kinds of ideas permeate into society and can create destabilization.
What would be your plan?
So when you have that, you now need to look at it from a broader perspective. One, you need to make it not possible, not easily possible for your young people especially to be attracted into ideologies that can create...
How do we do that though?
So, jobs. Economic well-being, the nation state being present. It's a fast. The issue is that the community, when it's broken, forgets about the young people. And when they're forgotten, there's someone who comes along and says, I care about you. That's a supply system for terrorism, for the ideologies like Boko Haram. You must fix economic livelihood in all regions of our country. Two, you need to do security sector reforms so that establishments of security will not be broken in the way they are broken, where their performance and accountability for their role is so subpar. And the reality of it is, as population has surged, we have not taken a very forensic look at our policing capabilities, our military capabilities, and then our intelligence capabilities. A major part of what I would do also is preemptive and proactive approach, which means that investing in intelligence assets, especially in a new world where disruptive technologies offer you much more opportunity to anticipate problems and to solve them. And clearly, transboundary nature of crime means that regional solutions are important.
For you, say you were the president when those girls were kidnapped, or say you become president and then a group of girls are kidnapped.
Oh, God forbid.
God forbid.
In fact,
you must add that.
Still missing, so we can use that as an example.
Yes,
God forbid.
God forbid.
In the instance that it happened, what would be your response? What would be your reaction? Would you be open to negotiations, for example? How would you respond since you would be the commander of the armed forces?
What would happen is that, number one, the response has to be swift. In the case of Chibok girls, the response was not swift. There was so much tentativeness.
So swift to moving?
Swift to, there's something called when people are taken, the first thing that you do is a quick search and rescue operation. In the case of Chibok girls, it was said that 72 hours of travel in a place where we had emergency of soldiers in operation, and yet they could move all that distance. So we had to be swift and be responsive immediately. Number two would be to know the inadequacies of my own security system, and to therefore be willing and open to seek the support of others that are willing to step in.
The
because
international
life,
community.
yes, and regional.
It gets
also.
worrying though, because sometimes when we look at the influence of the international community on us here in Nigeria, there are several things that we have to worry about. You served as the vice president of the World Bank Group, and I think Bretton Woods institutions have their own agenda here in Nigeria today, which is why when we even look at things like aid, it ends up being a very vicious cycle.
Don't worry about that. When it comes to the matter of security, there are mechanisms for using global support. It doesn't mean that you give over your security to an external power. That's not it. It is basically that there are shared assets that can enable its people who have superior intelligence to support you. There was a bit of that happened during that period, but it didn't happen at the scale and the swiftness that was necessary for the girls to have been brought back. So I would say that making the understanding the primacy of life, honestly, I believe that a key conversation that we will have as a country is that conversation on what is the Nigerian life worth. Not on the basis of where they come from, not on the basis of the religion they practice, not on the basis of the social class they belong to, just the Nigerian life. Equality of respect and sanctity of the human life. The dignity that we must accord life.
Just on a lighter note, apparently during your time as minister, you earned the nickname Madam Due Process.
Don't call me that name. That's what I used to say in those days.
What do you attribute that to?
So, you know, I mean, you see how serious-minded I am. So, we were really serious about that reform. So we needed to show some record of Nigeria changing the way that it uses its own resources, that it was now getting value for money in its public resources. And so we had to design that system for due process, where if you do not meet with the criteria that any globally competitive contract would be conducted in any other part of the world, then you do not have access to the public treasury. So the way we implemented it with such zeal and steadfastness, so the politicians, actually it wasn't really the politicians first, it was Adamu Shioma, he's now dead, God bless his family and comfort them. He was the one that said, actually Oby, now you have a new name from me. And he started calling me Madam DP. Madam Due Process. And then the ones that hated the due process now said, let's remove her name permanently and just call her Madam Due Process. so when they would call me, and I would say, don't call me that name, because I didn't want them to wrap that vision around me. Every vision must be outside of the individual. You must, because that's the way you can sustain it. If they wrapped it around me, then, you know, but part of the way that we then made sure that that vision sustained was that my team and I worked on what you know today as the Bureau for Public Procurement, so that the due process became codified into that law on public procurement. Contract awards used to be the honeypot of politicians. I'm not saying that it has changed completely, but it's definitely vastly more improved than what I saw by the time I came back home to fix it.
Is Nigeria ready for a female president?
I think Nigeria is more than ready for a female president, to the extent that women are solving problems in Nigeria every day. Women are leading in communities, leading in companies, leading in families. To that extent, can you say that women are leaders? The idea that leadership is gender sensitive worries me. I think that leadership is gender neutral. It has been proven over and over again. I think that the key ingredients that any individual needs in order to be a leader is to be a person of vision, and to be a person with the kind of character that enables them serve for the greater good of the people.
But why did you announce so late, though? You announced your run quite late.
You read my mind.
Yeah, because
you're going to ask the same thing.
Now as well.
You're going to ask the same
in
thing.
February,
right?
And we only have about 4 to 5 months left. Why didn't you come out sooner?
Could it be that you weren't sure initially, or?
It wasn't even about not being sure. It was about, you know, at that point in time when that trigger happens, where you sort of, and the trigger for me was, we're watching all of the movement on the politics of the land. And you're seeing that no matter how much citizens have used their voice to give a feedback to our politicians, that the way that they have carried on with the mismanagement of the country just doesn't get any form of remorse on the part of the politicians. But what I began to see was, where are your credible alternatives? Like it was a mockery. As if to say, we are consigned to the mediocrity. So get used to it. This is what it is. You've got to accept this that we're given to you. And it got to the point where I could no longer carry it. Because I said to myself, 4 more years of a repetitive cycle of failure means that we are going to be in trouble. The fiscal distress that we already find ourselves in, the burgeoning number of poor people, we are now the world capital of extreme poverty. You give it 4 more years of mismanagement of the economy, my goodness, the Northeast would be a joke. Because drivers of conflict, drivers of terrorism, drivers of destabilization are found in joblessness. And I noticed that a lot of young people who should ordinarily renew and refresh our politics are shying away from it because they are afraid of this system that has been failing them. So I said, since I cannot, it was 2 choices that I had. To just simply say, I give up on Nigeria. Or I could try one more thing. And that one more thing that remained. Because by the way, it was at the age of 44 that I left government, having done the things that I'd done in government. So imagine anyone who's me and thinking that my interest is to go and be some minister or get some, that person is not thinking critically.
You co-founded Transparency International.
It was such a privilege.
What can you say are some of the biggest achievements of Transparency International?
Before Transparency International, nobody talked about corruption. It was the most indecent conversation to start around the world. People knew it was going on, but nobody mentioned the C word. With Transparency International, we brought it to the top of the global agenda, that corruption is a cost and a tax on development, and that it has a corrosive effect on systems, and therefore makes it impossible for you to have efficiency in the way that things are done when you have corruption. And that corruption has implications for gross domestic product, for growth, for taxation, for quality of education, quality of human capital development, for critical infrastructure, for even security. And so that corruption is a development issue. And that if you're going to tackle it, you needed a coalition of forces of government, civil society, and private sector. And that was how come each segment of the world began to find its own necessary measures that it needed to take. Countries began to think in terms of national integrity systems based on the architecture of systems that prevent corruption. For example, a number of global treaties that you know today came out of the work of Transparency International on corruption. We have what we call the OECD Treaty, outlawing bribery in international business, international cooperation. Do you know that that was what made a number of countries in Europe to remove payment of bribes as a tax-deductible item?
Speaking of transparency, how do you plan on making your government as transparent as possible?
You know, there are measures. For example, we have the Freedom of Information Act. a lot of countries that have the FOI sometimes don't even want to use it because people want to do things in an opaque manner. In my government, we would look at the Freedom of Information Act as an important instrument that empowers citizens to constantly keep a check on what the government is doing. As a leader, I'm not going to be everywhere, But if I know that citizens are actively engaged in scrutinizing what the government is doing, then I know that we would find problems, detect problems quickly, and be able to fix them.
Interesting. Now, when you were working in the government under the administration of Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, of course, you would have had to deal with some corrupt persons in your time. You would have encountered these people. Did you ever make use of these acts, like the Freedom of Information Act, for example, to put a case forward on certain people around you that you knew were corrupt?
Well, you know, the thing is, if in doing the due process, for example, when people are trying to circumvent the rules, the rules that established how you would do the contract, they have not run, for example, foul of the law in terms of what was supposed to happen, but we could prevent them from actually running foul of the law. The most important thing that you do in an anti-corruption environment is that you must have the agencies that can detect wrongdoing. The mandate of the agencies that can detect wrongdoing is to be able to establish that bad behavior has happened. We, in our own case, could say that a company that has a government contract is in collusion with a public servant, then the reporting goes immediately to the civil service. The civil service then makes that report.
Did you ever do that? Did you?
No, we didn't have any case of that. We didn't.
But are there people that you look at that you're like, I definitely could have a case on this person?
No, you see, part of the reason that I always don't want to say this person is corrupt is that until that person is actually proven to be corrupt before a court of competent jurisdiction, you know, it would amount to mob action and defamation, you know, it's slanderous. I mean, the easiest thing to do is to point fingers and say, sure, but you're not sure. But we don't. One of the injustice you can do to an anti-corruption program is to use finger pointing as a basis, because you know what would happen? What would happen is that over time people would take the anti-corruption war on serious.
No, but whistleblowing is.
I love whistleblowing.
Yeah.
If you say
so
wrongdoing, if I knew that I find some money that had been stolen, then I would whistleblow.
If you got into power, what would you say would be at the top of your priority list?
So number one, I've already alluded to it, is that I want to disrupt the pattern of an oil-obsessed society, where we actually think that how best we can be is dependent on the price, the up and down movement of oil price. I don't want that. I want a society that tries to raise its quality of living, its standard of living annually on the basis of productivity and competitiveness. Those are huge for me. So it means that the barriers that stand in the way of individuals, especially the young and the women, to being able to express ideas and have the values for their ideas, I would be removing those barriers. Some of those barriers are institutional barriers. The environment for doing business, or barriers in terms of the absence of critical infrastructure, or even the kind of skills that they need in order to run their businesses. Then the second thing is knowledge capital. For you to have productive and competitive economy, your knowledge capital has to be huge. Right now, when you compare Nigeria and Singapore, Singapore is at 98%. We are at 57% in terms of measures of knowledge capital. We have to, just really disrupt and move quickly. Another thing is equality of opportunities. In environments where you begin to reward merit, you reduce the tendency toward a race to the bottom. What we have today as federal capital, a federal character principle, it just takes everybody on a race to the bottom. And I hate it. I want us to be on a race to the top. So we have to innovate mechanisms to make equality of opportunity the way that we live and reward competence. And then for those who are not at a place of competitiveness, we need to spend extra moments in policies, in partnerships to get them to the place where they can compete and be able to do well. I believe that just looking at Nigeria and saying that Nigeria must be at the table where countries are using full adoption of disruptive technologies to change the structure of their economies can make all the difference. The young segment of our population will not operate in an environment of the kind of structure of economy that we knew. They are going to have to be hugely productive because that's the only way that they can play in the global marketplace of ideas and services and products. And for you to do that, you must be a government that drives this full adoption of everything that is disruptive technologies. I would not be afraid to go to optimize the use of robotics, artificial intelligence, blockchain technology. I would be huge on data. I would even go extra and do big data if it is relevant for us. I would look at Internet of Things. I would think of, the fourth industrial revolution as our own opportunity to be at the table when we missed the table of agrarian revolution, the agricultural revolution, the first industrial revolution, and then even the knowledge in the ICT revolution. We have been there, but mostly as consumers. When I look at the kind of mind young, we can already see leaders that are at the frontier of technology.
So now it's to maximize the potential.
It is to maximize it. It is to provide them the enabling. I imagine myself just in a learning mood and sitting with incredible minds that are doing amazing things already in technology and saying to them, how much more can we push the frontiers? I really want a disruptive approach, because with disruption, what you do is that you depart from the old and move in a new direction that gets you faster, or a destination faster than the old path could have taken you. My mind is very young when it comes to issues of technology, because I totally believe in this exponential growth paradigm.
Under what party would you be running?
You are already, not will I be running, I'm already running.
Are you running? Sorry.
We are running, because I say to people that it is all of us that are running. I am not running alone, we are all running. And the party that we're running on is called the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria, ACPN, Allied Congress Party of Nigeria. And it's pretty easy to find us, ACPN Hope.
Who's the national chairman?
ACPN Hope. Ganiyu Galadima is the national chairman.
Is this someone that's been within politics?
Yes, he was actually the presidential candidate in 2015. Under this party, under the Action Congress Party of Nigeria. You can find it on Twitter, you can also visit Oby.2019.com in order to find the overriding policies that we are focused on. I can assure you that if you want a different Nigeria, you don't go with the old ideas. There is a target that you should always keep your eyes on as far as our party is concerned. Some 67 million people registered for the 2015 elections. Only 28 million people ended up voting for either of the two dominant parties. For the two dominant parties, rather, not either of them. The two dominant parties, total vote, about 28 million. 67 million people registered. So you have to ask yourself, what happened? What happened that this scale of people...
So those people sitting at home saying, my vote will not count, it doesn't matter, are actually the difference.
Indeed, it's even those people who are saying, what kind of choice is this? Why should I have to choose? There are people who now say in Nigeria, we're choosing the lesser of two evils. Why must the Nigerian deserve to choose between two evils? We also have some 14 million new voters that enter the voters register. Did you know that? Some 14 million new voters. Now, those are people, most of them would be people who came of age And some of them would
I'm
be
one
people.
of them.
Yeah. Oh, well,
Me
for
too.
I'm one of them.
Wow, there you go. There you go.
I've never voted. This is going to be my first time. I'm going to vote.
So guess what? Your category of people, we're getting messages from them. And they're the ones who are saying, I don't want to stay with the old pattern of politics. I am looking for something that's different. They are buying into the idea that it's actually possible for us to build a new Nigeria. I love the fact that there is a strong appetite in the amongst the electorate of your generation, sort of saying, why shouldn't Nigeria be even as good as Singapore? The only way that leadership emerges in a democracy is through politics. I am telling you, it took us too long to come to the conclusion that we needed to fix Nigerian politics. And I believe that it is the citizens that must fix Nigeria's politics. Because I think it must have been one of the presidents of the United States, I forget which one now, that said that vigilance is the price that citizens pay for liberty. If we're going to get our liberation from bad politics, bad governance failure, then it must be on the basis of the vigilance of the office of the citizen that you and I
What do you do to relax?
What do I do to relax? I am so queer, you know. I am so queer. You know, I mean it, you know, so I say I want to relax, and then I pick some very dense book and I'm reading.
That's not relaxation.
And my husband says that's not relaxation, you know. But I have to say that I want to get back into playing table tennis because I loved table tennis, you know, as and somehow I lost the fire for it. But
so
I'm
you
going
want to put a table tennis room into Aso Rock?
Yes, I'm going to put it. Will you come play with me?
Why not?
You better visit.
And then, you know, it's also a good way to keep fit as well.
You know, it helps you keep fit. But I think that what people don't know is how much I enjoy just unwinding by dancing. But I don't dance where people see me. If you came to the church, you would see me dancing, of course.
Yeah.
But when I'm at home and I really want to let my hair down.
So what?
No, you didn't get it. Falz didn't get it. I thought I was letting my hair down.
That was a good one.
You know. So when I want to let my hair down, I just like play that music, you know, and I'm singing and I'm dancing and my husband is giggling, you know, really. Because
what kind of music do you listen to apart from gospel?
Apart from Falz bad guy.
So I listen to gospel. I mean, like that's a given.
That's just
now. And then there are some oldies. For example, I love some of those songs that we had when I was growing up. Some of my friends already know that I'm going to say, I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Give them a sense of pride to make it easier. Let the children's laughter remind us how we used to be. Everybody searching for a hero. People need someone to look up to. I never found anyone who fulfilled my needs. A lonely place to be. And so I learned to depend on me.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been amazing. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And we wish you good luck.
Thank you, guys. Really great to have come. Thank you.
This is Nigeria. Look how I'm living now. Look how I'm living now. Everybody be criminal. This is Nigeria. Look how we living now. Look what we eating now. Everybody be